Imagine a life where your every step, every decision, even your most intimate thoughts and desires are shaped by an invisible force. A law so deeply rooted in your psyche that you follow it, often without realizing it exists. It dictates your fears, defines your aspirations, and shapes your perception of yourself. This law was not created by any government, proclaimed by religion, or imposed by authority. It lives within you, in the darkest and most unexplored corners of your subconscious. Carl Jung, who dedicated his life to exploring these hidden forces, discovered a truth so disturbing that many people instinctively turn away from it. A truth that, when understood and accepted, can lead to incredible personal freedom. But, when ignored, dooms one to endless cycles of self-sabotage, fear, and suffering. You're about to find out why this forbidden law is the key to unlocking your true potential. But be prepared for this knowledge to bring a challenge. Once you see the truth, you can never turn away from it. And the final revelation will be the most powerful of all, capable of forever changing your understanding of yourself and the world around you. Carl Jung, a prominent researcher of the human psyche, proposed a revolutionary concept of the structure of the mind, presenting it as a multi-layered system where the conscious I, the personality we show to the world, is just the tip of the iceberg. In the vast depths of the unconscious, according to Jung, lies something far more complex and mysterious, a hidden part of our being that we have diligently avoided throughout our lives. Jung called this hidden side the shadow. The shadow, according to Jung's theory, is a collection of all those aspects of our personality that we have rejected, suppressed, or denied. It consists of emotions that we were taught to consider unacceptable, desires that we were taught to be ashamed of, and even strengths that we never managed to accept in ourselves. From the moment we are born, we begin to learn what is considered acceptable and what is not. Parents, educators, and society as a whole shape our idea of what we should be. We are encouraged for certain behaviors and punished, explicitly or implicitly, for others. Over time, we learn to hide certain facets of our personality in order to earn approval, fit into society, and feel safe. But what happens to those parts of us that we reject? They do not disappear without a trace, but sink into the unconscious, where they continue to influence our thoughts, actions, and feelings, even if we are not aware of it. The more persistently an individual tries to suppress their shadow, the stronger it affects their life. The shadow manifests itself unexpectedly. It poisons confidence, generates inexplicable fears, forms destructive habits, and even determines the social circle, attracting certain people and repelling others. Surely everyone has noticed that the character traits that cause the greatest rejection in others are often a reflection of something that is deeply hidden in the person themselves. If someone's arrogance, egocentrism, or thirst for power causes strong irritation, then the problem lies not in the other person, but in the fact that they only mirror the unaccepted aspects of their own shadow. Carl Jung called this phenomenon projection. When an individual rejects certain qualities in themselves, they subconsciously transfer them to others, accusing them of those shortcomings that they cannot reconcile within themselves. This leads to an inexorable law governing human existence. It is necessary to bravely face one's shadow, otherwise it will take over. Violation of this law dooms a person to an unconscious existence, in the captivity of the illusion of complete self-understanding, while the subconscious subtly directs their decisions. However, in order to awaken and free oneself from this hidden control, it is necessary to do what most people fear most of all: to look directly into the darkest corners of their soul and accept them as an integral part of their personality. This is the path to true freedom and self-knowledge. Coming face to face with one's own shadow is, frankly, not an easy task. This implies not just a fleeting acquaintance, but a deep dive into unpleasant, sometimes painful truths about oneself. It is about recognizing the duality of one's own nature, realizing that a person is not only the ideal image to which they aspire, but also the frightening personality that they desperately fear becoming. This is the acceptance in oneself of such unsightly qualities as envy, outbursts of anger, selfish impulses, weaknesses, and even those secret desires that have been carefully suppressed for years. However, here lies the paradox. In the depths of this very shadow lies not only darkness, but also colossal potential. The aspects of personality that a person persistently denies are actually an inexhaustible source of energy for unlocking their true potential. The deepest fears often point to the strongest attributes, and suppressed emotions hold the keys to personal transformation. Why then do people repeatedly make the same mistakes? Why do they get caught up in destructive relationships, wallow in self-destructive habits, or waste their lives on jobs they dislike? The answer is simple. They are led by the shadow, subtly directing their actions from beneath the surface of consciousness. Until a person dares to face their shadow, they will remain a puppet in the hands of forces they do not understand. But what happens when a person decides to confront their inner demons? When they find the courage to stop running from themselves and open-heartedly embrace those hidden corners of their soul that they previously tried to ignore, it is at this moment that genuine personal transformation begins. Carl Jung, the eminent Swiss psychologist, called this process individuation, a complex but incredibly important journey of integrating all aspects of one's self, both light and dark, into a unified, harmonious, and authentic whole. It is worth asking oneself a few important questions. What aspects of their personality does a person diligently avoid? Which emotions cause them discomfort and rejection? What is it about other people that strikes a nerve, causing a storm of internal experiences? All of these are valuable clues, signals sent by the unconscious, which point to the parts of the personality that need awareness and acceptance. Later, we will examine the consequences of ignoring one's shadow and the specific steps that can be taken to integrate it in order to unlock the dormant power within. But before moving on, it is important to consider the following. Does a person really know who they are, or are they only familiar with the version of themselves that they allow others to see? If the shadow contains the rejected parts of the personality, what happens if one continues to stubbornly ignore it? What happens when the emotions, desires, and fears that a person suppresses remain buried deep inside, exerting a hidden influence on their thoughts and actions? Carl Jung warned that the more a person suppresses their shadow, the more powerful it becomes. When a person refuses to acknowledge their hidden aspects, they do not disappear without a trace, but begin to subtly control their life, manifesting in the most unexpected ways. This is why people often find themselves trapped in repeating scenarios from which they cannot escape. Why do some people, as if programmed, sabotage their own happiness? Why do others repeatedly find themselves in relationships that cause them pain and suffering? Why do people so often take actions that contradict their own interests? The answer lies in the unrecognized and unintegrated shadow. The answer to many questions lies in the depths of the human psyche, in the so-called shadow. The shadow is not just a metaphorical concept. It is an integral part of the personality, influencing a person's life in ways that are sometimes imperceptible. Suppressed emotions inevitably find a way out. Hidden anger can manifest as passive aggression or unjustified resentment. Rejected desires can result in impulsive and reckless behavior. Fears that a person refuses to face can keep them in a vicious cycle of avoidance, depriving them of the opportunity to take risks and grow. It is worth reflecting on one's own life. Have you ever experienced an excessively strong reaction to certain events or people, wondering why it affects you so much? Have you ever found yourself in situations that seem like they should never have happened again? Such moments indicate the manifestation of the shadow. When a person does not integrate their shadow, it acts covertly, controlling them like a puppet, pulling invisible strings. But what happens when a person decides to face their shadow? This is where the transformation process begins. Carl Jung argued that genuine psychological growth, which he called individuation, is only possible through the integration of the shadow. Integration does not imply indulging in destructive impulses or following every suppressed emotion. It means recognizing these hidden aspects of the personality, bringing them to the level of consciousness, so that they can no longer unconsciously control a person's behavior. Integrating the shadow aspects of personality is a complex but essential task on the path to self-discovery. It requires extreme honesty with oneself, deep self-analysis, and a willingness to face all facets of one's being, not just the embellished image presented to others. It is at this stage that many people experience difficulties and retreat. The human mind naturally resists such a deep and sometimes painful process of self-analysis, preferring more comfortable paths. It is much easier to blame external circumstances for failures, to portray oneself as a victim of circumstances than to admit being the creator of one's own destiny. However, if a person recognizes the necessity of this work on themselves, it means that deep within, a readiness for awakening, for stepping beyond the illusions that have defined their life until now, is already ripening. The only question is whether they are ready to take this decisive step. To facilitate this process, it can be broken down into specific stages. First and foremost, there must be awareness. One should begin by carefully observing their reactions to what is happening. It is important to pay attention to those situations and phenomena that evoke strong emotional responses, whether it be anger, fear, envy, or even excessive admiration. These reactions serve as signposts, helping to uncover what is hidden in the shadows of the subconscious. For example, if a person feels resentment or dislike towards confident and successful people, it is worth asking why this is happening. Perhaps their success reminds them of their own unrealized ambitions and desires. If the arrogance of others is irritating, it may be related to a belief instilled in childhood that self-confidence is something reprehensible or dangerous. If someone's open vulnerability causes discomfort, it may be a consequence of upbringing in which emotions were perceived as a sign of weakness. After discovering these hidden aspects of human nature, the next step is to accept them. This does not imply immediate indulgence in every hidden passion or sudden impulse, but rather recognition of their existence as an integral part of the personality. A person is not only the image they aspire to, but also what they try to avoid. And there is nothing wrong with that. Carl Jung argued that achieving wholeness is possible not through denying the shadow side of the personality, but through its conscious acceptance. He wrote that enlightenment comes not through visualizing bright images, but through making the darkness conscious. This means allowing oneself to see one's own internal contradictions, acknowledging one's weaknesses, and accepting the fact that perfection is unattainable, but wholeness is quite possible. The moment when a person stops fighting, their shadow becomes the moment when their inner strength returns. By integrating the shadow, it ceases to control their actions. Instead of unconscious actions, a person begins to make conscious choices. Instead of projecting their hidden fears onto others, they take responsibility for their own development. This is the difference between those who continue to remain in a state of slumber and those who awaken. Those who are asleep continue to be under the power of their unconscious fears, repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Those who are awakened find the courage to break unspoken prohibitions in order to meet their true selves, without illusions, and to find their true strength. However, the real discovery awaits ahead. What if the most outstanding virtues of a personality are hidden in the depths of its shadow? What if those aspects that a person has diligently suppressed are actually the key to their transformation? A subsequent exploration will reveal the incredible power available to those who dare to integrate their shadow, and it will become clear why this revelation can become the most significant in life. For those who have followed this path, it becomes obvious that the rejected parts of themselves are not enemies, but rather missing elements of the personality. But what happens when the long-awaited integration occurs? What awaits beyond fear and resistance? Carl Jung argued that in the shadow are hidden not only suppressed fears and shortcomings, but also colossal, unrealized potential. The paradox is that what a person fears most often contains precisely those strengths that are necessary for transforming life. The confidence that is admired in others but not allowed to be expressed is part of the shadow. Ambitions suppressed due to being raised in modesty are also in the shadow. Emotions that were considered excessive, dreams that were abandoned due to seeming unreality, strength that was feared due to being taught humility, all this is contained in the shadow, waiting for a return. This is where the real magic begins. Integrating the shadow does not simply overcome fear. but awakens a new level of personal power. A person begins to see themselves in a different light, getting rid of the gap between who they seem to be and who they really are. They become whole, and in this wholeness, they find an unstoppable force. Let's not hide the truth. The path of self-discovery is by no means strewn with roses. It demands a closed look inside oneself, sincerity with oneself, and the courage to look into the darkest corners of the soul where many prefer not to look. Modern society is in no hurry to support work with the shadow side of personality because it is much more profitable for it that people remain ignorant of their inner strength. One only has to look around. Entire industries make money on human weaknesses and doubts, and social institutions often seek to keep people in a state of dependence, forcing them to fear their own depths. The further a person moves away from their true self, the easier it is to manipulate them. That is why meeting one's shadow becomes a kind of act of disobedience, an awakening in a world that prefers a person to remain asleep. But once you see the truth, there is no turning back. It begins to dawn on you how, from childhood, you were taught to reject yourself, to fear your instincts, and to doubt your own intuition. And when you manage to return these lost parts of yourself, a transformation occurs into a new version of yourself, free from previous limitations. So, how does this exciting process of self-discovery begin? How is this deep inner work practically implemented? The first step towards integrity is radical self-awareness. This implies close attention to your emotional reactions, behavioral patterns, and fleeting feelings. It is important to notice what exactly causes discomfort. What makes a person take a defensive position? What generates a feeling of insignificance or unworthiness? It is in these dark corners of consciousness that the shadow of personality is hidden. Instead of pushing away these unpleasant feelings, it is recommended to stay with them alone. Try to understand their nature and ask yourself the question, what is this situation trying to teach me? The second important step is self-acceptance. And this is where many people face serious difficulties. Recognizing your shadow is only part of the journey. It is much more difficult to accept it without judgment and self-flagellation. It is necessary to realize that a person is neither absolutely good nor absolutely bad. They are a holistic personality, capable of manifesting both light and dark sides. True strength and harmony are achieved by integrating both of these sides, recognizing their equal existence. The third step is expression. After a person has recognized and accepted these hidden parts of themselves, it is necessary to find a constructive way to integrate them into their life. This does not mean that you need to blindly follow every impulse or become reckless. It's about allowing yourself to be fully present in the moment, expressing your true essence without shame, and living in accordance with who you really are, and not with who you were taught or expected to be. This is the path to authenticity and freedom from imposed roles and limitations. Think about the image of a person who evokes sincere admiration, someone who radiates genuine freedom, unwavering confidence, and inner strength. What sets them apart from the general mass? The secret lies not in the absence of dark sides, but in their conscious acceptance and integration. Such people boldly looked into their fears, accepted both their advantages and disadvantages, and revealed their potential in its entirety. And this path is open to everyone. And here it is, the key and most powerful truth. As soon as the integration of the shadow occurs, the world around begins to transform. Interpersonal relationships reach a new level as the need to project one's own hidden fears onto others disappears. New horizons and opportunities open up as self-sabotage ceases to be an obstacle to success. A complete transformation of energy occurs, attracting people and events that resonate with the true self. That is why working with the shadow is the key to freedom. This is not just a healing process. It is the unveiling of an incredible level of personal power, which only a few dare to touch. But those who dare to do this are able to change the world. In the final chapter of this journey, the last and deepest truth about the shadow will be revealed, which is capable of turning all ideas about oneself and about reality itself upside down. Are you ready to take this decisive step? If so, let me know and we will continue our research. The culmination is coming. The realization of the truth that can radically transform the perception of life, personality, and the very essence of reality. Carl Jung viewed working with the shadow side not just as a psychological practice, but as a path to spiritual awakening. The integration of the shadow opens a deep understanding. A person has never been just a fragmented being struggling to survive in a chaotic world. They have always been something much more. Holistic, powerful, divine. This is the greatest secret of the shadow. It is not an enemy, but a key to transformation. The very aspects of ourselves that evoke fear hold the potential for liberation. It's worth contemplating. What if all of life's hardships, painful experiences, and recurring patterns are not a curse, but a valuable lesson? What if suffering is intended not for destruction, but for awakening? What if everything we run from actually leads us to ourselves? Jung deeply understood this, considering the unconscious, the shadow side of the psyche. Not just a repository of fears and suppressed emotions, but also a gateway to something greater. He called it the process of individuation, a journey to discovering the most complete and authentic version of oneself. This journey is nothing less than spiritual awakening. The truth is that by confronting the shadow, one not only heals old wounds, but also reclaims their true self, the part that is fearless and limitless, the part that was never broken. When a person achieves profound self-awareness, a transformation occurs in their life. They cease to be a puppet of circumstances and become the creator of their own destiny. There is no longer a feeling of being a victim, doomed to repeat past mistakes. On the contrary, there is an understanding of one's own power in shaping reality. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Jung implied that many people live their lives without realizing how their fears, insecurities, and suppressed desires determine their every step. It seems to them that they are making choices, but in reality they are driven by hidden forces. However, when a person brings the unconscious to the level of consciousness, they regain control over their life. They begin to act not out of fear, but out of awareness. There is no longer an attraction to painful cycles. Instead, new horizons of opportunity open up. A person stops living according to someone else's script and begins to write their own story. This is the ultimate truth. One is not born to be a prisoner of their dark side, but to accept it, subdue it, and use it as a source of wisdom and strength. Now, a dilemma arises. Do you have the courage to take an action that few dare to take? Will you look into the hidden corners of your nature to reclaim what rightfully belongs to you? Will you give up running from your own shadow and bravely face it, realizing that behind it lies your true self? If you dare to embark on this path, if you gather all your courage for this journey, you will transform not only yourself, but also the world around you. This is a mysterious law that awakened souls revere above all else. Those who neglect it are doomed to wander in mazes of illusions, while those who accept it find a life full of strength, meaning, and freedom. The choice is yours. Will you dare to take the first step on this path of self-discovery? Thank you for your attention.